The conference room was filled with lively conversation as I noticed my phone vibrating with an incoming call from Tyler. Expecting the usual small talk about my trip and when I would be home, I stepped into the hallway. But Tyler's voice cut through, cold and smug. "I'm divorcing you," he declared with a triumphant edge. "I've already sold the apartment, so you'll need to figure out your living situation." For a moment, I was breathless, stunned by his audacity and lack of remorse. My grip tightened on the phone as his words settled in. "You sold the apartment?" I inquired, maintaining a steady voice. "Yeah," he replied with a dry laugh. "Nicole and I need the money to start our life together. She deserves better than that tiny place." Hearing Nicole's name stung. Although the signs of another person had been clear for months, Tyler's late nights, sudden work trips, and growing distance. But hearing her name so casually, like I was the intruder, ignited a fire in my chest. "All right," I responded calmly, not giving him the satisfaction of seeing me falter. "I'm Amelia. And up until that call, I thought Tyler was someone I could trust." After 6 years together, despite the imperfections, I believed in our partnership. We worked hard to purchase our apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom in the city that I fell in love with instantly. It wasn't just a home, it symbolized everything we had built, or so I thought. In hindsight, there were signs I ignored. Tyler's dismissive attitude about finances and his tendency to brush off my concerns with charm. I assumed his confidence was knowing what he was doing. Now I understood it was knowing he could manipulate me. The rest of the day blurred by as I sat through meetings, my mind racing while nodding at all the right moments. Tyler thought he had bested me, pulling our home from under me with ease. But he overlooked an important detail. The apartment deed was in my name alone. I had transferred it after refinancing earlier that year, a detail Tyler overlooked since it meant lower interest rates. His carelessness would be his downfall. Returning to my hotel room that evening, shock morphed into determination. I wasn't going to cry or plead. Tyler wanted a fight. That was a fight I intended to win. My first call was to Chloe, my lawyer and longtime friend. I recounted everything, my voice even as my pulse raced. "He sold the apartment?" Chloe asked, incredulous. "Does he even know he can't do that without your consent?" "Apparently not," I replied, a hint of amusement in my tone. "He thinks he's already spent the money for his new life with Nicole." Chloe laughed dryly. "He's in for a rude awakening. The sale is invalid as you can prove sole ownership. If he's taken money from the buyer, he's on the hook for fraud." The word fraud triggered a wave of satisfaction. "What steps do we take?" I asked. "First, we'll inform the buyer the sale isn't valid," Chloe directed. "Then draft a formal letter to Tyler outlining the consequences if he acts further. If needed, we'll take him to court." As I ended the call, an unusual calm washed over me. Tyler believed he'd outwitted me, left me powerless. In truth, he'd orchestrated his own humiliation. I spent the rest of my trip focusing on work, compartmentalizing emotions, channeling energy into the task ahead. The betrayal hurt, but reclaiming my life and watching Tyler's smug demeanor crumble gave me purpose I hadn't felt in months. By the time I boarded the plane home, I was ready to confront Tyler, ready to overcoming his deceit and preparing to forge a new beginning. Without Tyler wasn't just about triumph, it was about regaining control. The journey back provided ample time to reflect on the events that transpired. Tyler's conceit was breathtaking. He didn't bother concealing his treachery, as if I was merely an obstacle on his quest for independence. Instead of succumbing to rage, I concentrated on my next steps upon returning. Tyler believed I was helpless, unaware that I had been strategizing all along, even unknowingly. As soon as the plane touched down, I immediately contacted Chloe. "I'm back," I announced as I retrieved my suitcase from the carousel. "What's the next move?" I inquired. "We've notified the buyer," she replied, her voice brisk and assured. They were quite surprised and not pleased with Tyler. "They're cooperating with us, which strengthens our position." "And Tyler?" I asked. "I sent a formal letter to his email this morning," she explained. It outlines the illegitimacy of the sale, your sole ownership of the apartment, and the potential fraud implications. He hasn't replied yet, but I'm guessing he's furious. Good. I thought. Let him simmer. Upon arriving home, I found the apartment eerily quiet. Tyler's belongings were still around, jackets draped over a chair, shoes carelessly by the door. Yet, something felt different, like the atmosphere had shifted. I inhaled deeply and set my suitcase aside, acknowledging the confrontation that would inevitably occur. As anticipated, Tyler stormed in that evening, visibly red-faced and clutching his phone. "What is this?" he demanded, waving the letter Chloe had sent. "Are you saying I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine." "No, Tyler," I responded calmly, crossing my arms. "It's not. The deed has been in my name for months. You can't sell what you don't own." He stood there, his face a blend of bewilderment and fury. "What are you talking about?" I retrieved the deed from the files I had prepared, presenting it to him. After we refinanced, I had the deed transferred to my name. "You signed it, remember? Or did you just gloss over the paperwork as usual?" For a moment, he was silent. Then his expression contorted into a mocking smirk. "You think you're clever, don't you? This changes nothing. I've made a deal, and you'll look foolish when it falls apart." I held his gaze without flinching. "The sale is already nullified, Tyler. The buyer knows. And they're prepared to take legal action unless you refund the deposit." Lowering my voice, I stepped closer. "And if you've spent any of that money, you're in deeper trouble." For the first time, Tyler's confidence faltered. "You don't know what you're talking about," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," I replied, my tone even. "You've spent years assuming I was too naive to notice. But guess what, Tyler? I've been observing, and now it's your turn to face the repercussions." He began pacing, frustration evident. "This is absurd. You're exaggerating everything. You can't just throw me out." I raised an eyebrow. "Actually, I can. This apartment is legally mine. You can stay here for now. But only because I'm granting you the time to plan your next move. But let's be clear, I'm not going anywhere." In the following days, Tyler's anger dissolved into desperation. He called incessantly, leaving frantic voicemails oscillating between pleading and threatening. Meanwhile, Chloe worked diligently to ensure all loose ends were resolved. The buyer withdrew their agreement. Enraged at Tyler for wasting their time and resources, and Chloe began drafting the initial divorce paperwork. "You're in a strong position," Chloe assured me during one of our meetings. "Tyler has no leverage. Between the invalidated sale and potential fraud charges, he'll have to cooperate to avoid further complications." Her words offered a sense of relief. They reminded me of how much I had let Tyler control my life for years. I ignored his dismissive and arrogant behavior, convincing myself it wasn't worth the fight. But now I realized how much I had compromised, and I was resolved to reclaim what I'd lost. One evening, Laura and my best friend came over to help me reorganize the apartment. We packed up Tyler's belongings, stacking them neatly in the corner of the living room. "How's he dealing with all this?" she asked, holding up one of his gaudy ties with a smirk. "Not well," I replied, laughing despite myself. "He's still convinced he can talk his way out of it, but I'm standing firm." "Good," she said, tossing the tie into the box. "He doesn't deserve any part of your space or time." I nodded, feeling grateful for her support. For so long, I felt isolated in my marriage, shouldering both the emotional and financial burdens while Tyler took credit for everything. But now, having people supporting me made all the difference. The last part of my plan came together the day Tyler brought Nicole to the apartment. I was at the dining table, reviewing some paperwork when they walked in, as if they owned the place. Nicole scanned the room with a smug grin, her arm looped through Tyler's. "So this is our new place?" she said, her voice dripping with entitlement. I stood, my heart pounding but my determination firm. "No," I stated clearly. "This is where Tyler was staying. You, Nicole, will not be staying here at all." Her smile vanished, and she glanced at Tyler, who looked equally shocked. What is this? He demanded. This, I gestured around the apartment, is my home, not yours, not hers, and certainly not a hotel for you to shack up in after betraying me. Nicole's face turned icy, but she remained silent. Tyler, however, looked on the verge of explosion. You can't do this, he shouted. You're being unreasonable. Holding his gaze, I stated calmly but firmly, no, Tyler. What's unreasonable is thinking you could sell my home, walk away with the money, and expect me to just roll over. You're fortunate I haven't pressed criminal charges yet. Tyler stood in the doorway, his face flushed with frustration while Nicole crossed her arms, looking increasingly uneasy. You're being ridiculous, Amelia, he said desperately. You can't just kick me out of what's mine. I stepped forward, my voice steady but resolute. This is my home, Tyler. The deed has been in my name for months, and you know that. You signed the paperwork without even reading it, just like always. So, no, this isn't your home anymore. Nicole looked at Tyler, her perfectly manicured hand tightening on her purse. Wait, what's she talking about? She asked sharply. You said this was your apartment, that you sold it. He hesitated, trying to dismiss her concerns. It's complicated. I'll handle it. Oh, it's not complicated, I interjected, moving closer. You tried to sell an apartment that doesn't belong to you. That sale is void, Tyler, and as of now, you have no standing. Nicole's composure broke. You mean the money you claim to have? She halted mid-sentence, her voice rising. Oh my God. Did you lie about that too? Nicole, let me explain, Tyler pleaded, raising his hands. But she wasn't having it. No. I cut in. Let me explain. Tyler attempted to sell the apartment behind my back, planning to pocket the money and leave me with nothing. What he didn't realize is that I had the deed transferred to my name months ago. So not only did he fail to sell it, but he also committed fraud by pretending he could. Nicole's eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Fraud, she whispered, stepping away from him. Are you for real? Yes, fraud, I affirmed, crossing my arms, and I'm ready to press charges if he doesn't gather his things and leave by the day's end. Tyler's facade finally broke. You can't do this, Amelia, he pleaded now. We've been together for 6 years. You can't just throw me out. You threw me out the moment you made that call. I replied, my voice hardening. You told me you were divorcing me and laughed about me having to find somewhere new to live. You didn't just betray me. Me, Tyler, you attempted to destroy me? So don't pretend you're the victim here. Nicole took another step back, her eyes flicking between us. This is crazy, she muttered, clutching her purse tighter. You didn't mention any of this. Tyler, you said you had it all under control. He turned to her, desperation etched on his face. Nicole, I can fix this, I just need. She cut him off with a raised hand. Don't. Just don't. I'm not getting mixed up in your mess. Without another word, she turned and stormed out, leaving him standing there, stunned. I couldn't help but smirk as the door clicked shut behind her. Looks like you're on your own, I said, turning back to Tyler. Now, let's discuss what happens next. He slumped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. Amelia, please, I messed up. I know that, but you don't have to do this. You're right, I said, grabbing a folder from the kitchen counter and placing it on the coffee table in front of him. I don't have to do this. But I am going to. These are the divorce documents. My lawyer has already drafted them, and I recommend you sign them quickly. The sooner you do, the sooner we can both move on. He stared at the folder, his face pale. You truly hate me that much? Hate you? I let out a bitter laugh. No, Tyler. I don't hate you. I pity you. You had everything, someone who loved you. A home we built together, and you threw it all away because you couldn't see past your own ego. I stood, my heart pounding, but my resolve solid. I want you out of here by the end of the day. Take your belongings and decide where you're going to stay. This is the last time I'm showing you any leniency. He opened his mouth to argue but stopped, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Fine, he muttered. I'll go. Good, I said, walking toward the door. And don't even think about trying anything else. Chloe is already managing everything, and the next time you cross a line, I won't hesitate to let the courts handle it. As I opened the door, Tyler slowly stood, grabbed his coat, and walked out without looking at me, his footsteps heavy with defeat. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness, not for him, but for the life we could have had if he'd been the man I thought he was. But that moment quickly passed, replaced by a sense of relief. I closed the door behind him, locking it with the new key I'd had made. This was my home now, and no one, especially not Tyler, would take it away from me again. The silence in the apartment after Tyler left was deafening. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. The space no longer felt heavy with his presence, his entitlement, or his lies. It was just me, the home I'd built, and the quiet realization that I had won, not just against him but against every doubt I'd ever had about standing up for myself. I stood in the middle of the living room, taking in the emptiness where his things had been. His oversized gaming chair, the framed jerseys that cluttered the walls, and the gaudy coffee table he insisted on keeping were all gone. The apartment looked cleaner, brighter, like it was mine again. Lauren came by that evening with takeout and a bottle of wine. "Is he really gone?" she asked, plopping down on the couch with a dramatic sigh. "Gone and not coming back," I said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. I gave him until the end of the day to pack his things. He didn't argue. Lauren raised her glass. To fresh starts and well-deserved victories. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling the weight of the past week slowly lifting, to never letting someone walk all over me again. Over the next few days, I began to reclaim the apartment, piece by piece. I rearranged the furniture, moved my favorite artwork into the living room, and filled the space with things that made me happy. It wasn't just about redecorating. It was about turning the apartment into a reflection of who I was, not the person Tyler had tried to make me. Chloe called with updates on the legal proceedings, her voice filled with the kind of confidence that made me feel invincible. "The fraud charges are off the table since the buyer decided not to pursue them," she explained. "But the divorce paperwork is moving along smoothly. Once Tyler signs, you'll be officially liberated." Hearing the word free made my heart constrict. It wasn't solely about the divorce. It encompassed everything I'd been shouldering for years: the bitterness, the self-doubt, the sensation of being confined in a marriage that didn't appreciate me. All of it was finally being lifted. Tyler attempted to reach out several times, his messages wavering between insincere apologies and pitiful efforts to guilt me into reconciliation. "I made a mistake," one message read. "Can't we at least discuss this?" Another was more desperate. "You're going to ruin me, Amia. Is that what you want?" I didn't respond. For once, I wasn't going to expend my energy repairing something irreparably broken. He had made his decisions, and now he was facing the repercussions. By the week's end, the apartment felt like an entirely new place, warm, welcoming, and completely mine. As I relaxed on the couch with a cup of tea, city lights twinkling beyond the window, I reflected on everything that had transpired. Tyler's betrayal had been startling, yet also a wake-up call. For too long, I had let myself believe that I didn't deserve better, that I had to accept whatever scant respect and love he tossed my way. But now I understood better. I wasn't just reclaiming my apartment, I was reclaiming my life. A month later, my life appeared entirely different. The apartment was unrecognizable, not because of any drastic renovation, but because of how it felt. It was now a space that represented me, my tastes, my personality, my newfound independence. The absence of Tyler's clutter and his oppressive presence made the home feel lighter, freer. The divorce was proceeding smoothly. Chloe managed everything with precision, ensuring Tyler had no room to argue or complicate matters. He signed the papers without much resistance, likely realizing he had no leverage. There was no grand showdown, no emotional plea to work things out, just a cold, clean severance that felt both bittersweet and immensely satisfying. One day, as I sorted through some old documents, I stumbled upon a photo of Tyler and me from our early days together. We were smiling, arms around each other, full of hope and promise. I gazed at it momentarily, letting the memories flood over me. There had been good times, moments when I genuinely believed we were building a life together. But those moments were now overshadowed by years of neglect, manipulation, and betrayal. I placed the photo in an envelope and stored it away in a drawer. It wasn't worth displaying, yet I wasn't ready to discard it either. It was part of my past, but it no longer defined me. Lauren and I celebrated the finalized divorce with dinner and drinks at a trendy rooftop bar downtown. "Your glow is back," she remarked, raising her cocktail for a toast. "Single life suits you." I laughed, experiencing a warmth I hadn't felt in years. "It's not the single life," I clarified. "It's the freedom. For the first time, I don't feel like I'm living under someone else's rules." We toasted to that, and as the night progressed, I felt a burgeoning sense of pride in myself. I had confronted one of the most challenging moments of my life and emerged stronger. I wasn't merely surviving, I was thriving. Back at home, I started planning for the future. The apartment had transformed into more than a sanctuary. It was a symbol of everything I'd reclaimed. But I knew I wouldn't stay there indefinitely. Someday, I'd move to a new place, one without any lingering shadows of my life with Tyler. Until then, I was determined to savor every moment in the space I had fought so hard to maintain. As I curled up on the couch that night, a wave of peace enveloped me. I reflected on how Tyler had laughed during that phone call, so convinced he'd won, and I couldn't help but smile. His arrogance had been his downfall, and my quiet strength, my salvation. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I made the decisions, one where I chose happiness on my terms. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly free.